Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be chatting to you about the Sony A7R III and shooting on it on a full frame versus the cropped frame. So recently when I was in Bali, I was using the Sony A7R III on the photo shoot, and I thought it would be pretty exciting to try and test out the crop frame on the camera because you can't do both in the sensor. The sensor is pretty big, it's 42 megapixels, and when you use crop frame it's around 24. So I thought that I would test it out and see if there's any more detail difference and how do the photos look. So as you guys know, I really love shooting with the A7R III. It's probably one of my favorite cameras of all time. I really enjoy shooting on it, and I recently compared it with the Sony A7 III, and as you guys know, they have a bit of a different size in terms of megapixels. Sony A7 III has basically half the size of the R3. But when I was shooting this particular shoot, as I said, I did it on the cropped sensor, so I think it's around the same as the A7 III in full resolution. So I thought it would be pretty interesting to compare the images, see how the quality is and so on, because as you guys know, shooting on a 40 megapixel camera takes quite a lot of space. I used the D800 before and it had similar size files, and it was just huge and it was so heavy on my hard drive, and it was pretty problematic down the line because I just ended up using so much memory and so much space on my computer and my hard drives. I had to keep buying new hard drives one after the other, and it was just really, it wasn't just very time or money efficient, to be honest. So on this particular shoot, we started early in the morning because we wanted to shoot in the direct sunlight, and I knew it was going to get harsh very quickly. So we got to the beach around 9 a.m, which was already relatively late for, you know, shooting in the morning, because usually the sun gets up at 6. So by 8-9 o'clock, it is usually quite high in the sky already. But we ended up doing it there, and I am primarily a Canon shooter, but if I was to shoot Sony, I would definitely get myself the lens I was shooting with. It's the 24-70 G Master lens 2.8, and it's a really beautiful lens. The sharpness is absolutely phenomenal in it. I really love how it captures the details. It's such a good quality lens. Unfortunately, the price reflects it, but I still think it's worth it. So I would definitely recommend that you guys test it out. The full frame obviously gives you a bit more room to play around with. There is more chance for you to crop the images, and you know, you can kind of zoom it in a bit more, and you definitely get a bit more detail in the shot. But I feel like the cropped version is way more efficient in terms of space, especially if you're working for, you know, Instagram or social media. This is a very good option that will save you a lot of disk space. The quality and the detail in the shot is really amazing. It's totally usable, even to print or for your portfolio. It's definitely not a problem. Even on cropped sensor, the dynamic range still looks amazing. The highlights and the shadows are preserved really well, and the photos look really good. The IAF performed really top notch as always. And in general, I just find the Sony A7R III is such a good solid camera. I am very excited to compare it with the Sony A7R IV. Hopefully soon. I think it's going to be great. But for now, I think both Sony A7R III and A7 III are really good cameras that are worth testing out. So as you probably know, it's much easier to recover shadows than trying to save highlights if they are blown or overexposed. So I always like to underexpose my images a tiny bit on the day, especially if I'm working in harsh conditions like this one where there was super harsh direct sun, because I find if I overexpose the highlights, it will be very hard to bring back. So I underexposed my images a tiny bit, and then in Lightroom, using my presets, I brought back the blacks. And as you see, it wasn't a problem at all. I was able to recover everything and make everything much more visible and clear. The dynamic range on the camera is very good, as I mentioned, so it definitely made my life a lot easier. Because I was working with a slightly higher f-stop around 3.5 or even 4, there wasn't that much bokeh, so there wasn't really that much difference. There was a very good quality of detail in each shot, and all in all, I was really impressed. As always, I was using the IAF to track the model's face, and it worked without any problems whatsoever. I also was very impressed with the dynamic range of the camera. I think the highlights and the shadows were really beautifully preserved, and you can really push it in Lightroom and brighten it. I'm going to show you some befores and afters so you can see for yourself. And all in all, I just think it's a really solid camera. I think the only major difference that I noticed was definitely in terms of focal length, because if you're using a 24-70, for example, if you're using 24 on a full frame, it is 24, but if you're using 24 on a cropped frame, it's going to be closer to 35 or 40. So this is something that you have to keep in mind. You're going to have a bit less room to play around with, but other than that, you know, if you have a lens like the 24-70, it still gives you enough of range of, you know, focal distances for you to work with. Here is some example of the close-ups. I zoomed it in 100% so you can see the amount of detail that you get in the photos and how much you know, you can see in the skin texture and so on. So all in all, I think you can easily shoot with the cropped sensor, save some space, and still be delighted with the image quality. Also, as you probably noticed right now, I don't really shoot black and white. I've never really been particularly confident in black and white. I've never really dabbled in it, but for the first time ever, I actually really felt like shooting in black and white and having the images in black and white. I think it made it way more dramatic because we had some really lovely clouds in the background, so I found it really interesting. But you know, as I said, I don't usually do that because I feel like it's something that is kind of outside of my comfort zone. But for the first time, I just thought that it was right and it fitted the mood pretty well. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know which ones do you prefer. Do you prefer the color versions or the black and white version? As I said, I personally actually love the black and white for the first time ever in my life, but I would love to hear what you have to say about it. All in all, I think Sony A7R3 is a great choice, as is Sony A7Riii. I think they're both amazing cameras, and having the option of the cropped sensor in the R3 is really good. That being said, I am super excited for the Sony A7R4 to be released. I think it's going to be really exciting to test it out whenever I get a chance to put my hands on it. I am very excited to test it out for you, and hopefully I will be able to show you a video soon. But in the meantime, if you did like this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you next time.